Welcome to Vendor Trash. Is the title a reference to my opinions, my drawing skills, or both? That's for you to decide. Battle for Azeroth was a wild time to be active in the game and invested in the writing, particularly for anyone who was attempting to understand what in the heck was going on with Sylvanas. To us players, her motivations were an incomprehensible enigma to attempt to unravel. Blizzard was really holding their cards close to their chest. Every patch we would postulate the most hopium-based theories. My favorite one was that she and Sourfang were executing a secret elaborate plan where they only pretended to be enemies to hit the Alliance in some masterstroke plan. In retrospect, we can be pretty confident that she was being villain-batted by a particularly problematic and spiteful writer, and that her inconsistent moments came from other writers either trying to perform damage control or simply not knowing themselves what the endgame was. But that wasn't the only crazy theory crafting that I performed at the time, and this next one, the focus of this video, is something that I don't believe I ever saw anyone else put forward. And it wasn't one based on desperation, but simply the vibes I was picking up, and that would be my ultimate crack ship. For the uninitiated, a crack ship is a fandom pairing of two characters that has extremely little evidence or basis in reality. The most popular crack ship at the time was Sylvanas and Jaina, two characters that had basically never interacted in any way until the Derek Proudmoore stuff. The crack ship that formed in my head was Azara and N'Zoth. Allow me to explain. The first real glimpse we get of their relationship was, of course, Azara's Warbringer short, which, by the way, is an amazing viewing and deserves the highest of praise. Stop watching this video and go watch that if you haven't. You don't want my shoddy description to be your first experience of it. Anyway, when the Sundering happened and rent the world asunder, Azara and her highborn followers are about to be crushed by the dispersed ocean water. She shields both herself and them from the waves. After all, without subjects, you cannot be a queen. But the waters were simply too great and heavy for her to handle, and the shield breaks. She awakes to find herself submerged in water and approached by a mysterious fish that we know to be how N'Zoth is speaking to her. He states that he has watched her for 1,000 years, which is very stalkerish, let me just say. The two of them have an exchange where N'Zoth essentially offers to save her from drowning by granting her his gift, so long as she agrees to serve him. She calls him nothing. He is outraged and shows her a vision of the Black Empire. This impresses her, but she still refuses the deal, stating that he should know what she wants, to be queen. The choice is his. Save her and make her queen, or let her die and remain in his prison forever. Just as she starts to lose the last of her heir, he converts her and her people into the Naga. Now, this 7-minute video alone caused a lot of speculation about what actually went down. Half the community was certain that Azara had forced N'Zoth's hand and gotten the upper end of the deal. The other half had the exact opposite stance, convinced that as an old god, N'Zoth was the master of deals and had played Azara by calling her his queen, but without actually being subservient to her. What was really intended by the creators of the Warbringer, we may never know. I, of course, sided with Azara, but I could see them intending it either way. But at any rate, this established the basic dynamic of their relationship. They are partners, they are allies, but they're a bit at odds with one another. Both want to be on top. Both think they're better than the other. Both kind of hate each other. And that's kind of hot. The next interaction we get between them is in the 8.2 opening cutscene. As Azara prepares to ensnare the Alliance and Horde in her trap, she gazes longingly at her own reflection in one of her palace's waterfalls. A shadowy tendril of N'Zoth approaches her from behind, and she chooses to taunt him about his predicament. He's still imprisoned, frustrated, powerless, dependent on her. But she does assure him that his freedom is nigh. She lifts her hand toward the shadow, and it shies away from her as if she has pushed it away, or perhaps as if the two of them are not yet allowed to touch. At any rate, she's clearly the one in control at this specific moment, and relishes in the fact, and relishes in her ability to playfully tease him about it. It's a delightful interaction, and this cutscene also gave us the best of Azara's facial expressions. Still with me? Good, because we're about to get into the content that really got me speculating. Nowadays, I tend not to look at lore spoilers, but back then it was really hard not to. And the stage play of sorts that we get in Phase 1 of Azara's raid fight was very, very intriguing to me. Let me just read out the relevant lines. The introduction from Azara. At last, the final preparations are in place, and we have a captive audience. You must indulge the theatrical nature of tonight's entertainment. We have waited so very long for this moment, and we simply cannot resist savoring it. Without further ado, the stage is set. The hour is at hand. Legions arise. Serve your queen's command. Upon aggroing her, she adds, I call the cursed lovers to enter the stage. Their eyes long for one another, yet their gaze incurs calamity. With painful memories, Athanel cries out, Cyranus, be gone from my gaze. While Cyranus replies, Leave my ken, Athanel. I cannot stand to look at you, Cyranus. Athanel, I hope to never glance at you again. With longing, Cyranus states, Athanel, I need you. Show yourself. And she answers, Where are you, my beloved? Your visage soothes me, Athanel. Where are you, my love? I must see you now. In stage 2 of the fight, Azara adds, I draw this ward with devoted blood. Lastly, in stage 4, she has the following lines. Lovers' hearts split asunder, devoted blood spilled freely upon the sand. The song of the deep rings to call him forth. Now, those last bits after Phase 1 are more easily dismissed as the devoted blood she speaks of could just be referring to us. But the Athanel and Cyranus bits, how do you hear all of that and just take it at face value? That it's literally just a random theater piece occupying the final fight of the raid without it representing anything whatsoever? To me, if it held any deeper meaning, that meaning was clear. Athanel is a stand-in for Azara. Cyranus is a stand-in for N'Zoth. They seem to hate one another, yet they also long for one another. Love and hate are two sides of the same coin, and that coin is passion. And that's kind of hot. At the end of the fight, we get just a bit more. Azara lays on the floor exhausted, as Lorthamar and Jaina, two characters who have a ton of history with her, that's sarcasm, approach to finish her off. But they were ultimately too late, and the chains binding N'Zoth are shattered. Shadowy tendrils shoot out and lift Azara up before doing something to her that causes her face to spring open in shock and then yanking her back through a shadowy portal. And once again, it was hard to be entirely sure what was going on here. Lots of people read it as Azara dying, and though that's certainly a reasonable take, I wasn't convinced. Her fingers seemed to wither, but that could just be her having used up all of her mana. And then what exactly is N'Zoth doing? It looks like he's gently cradling her here, like a lover would. Positive. But then we get an impaling sound effect? Negative. But he did revive her. Positive. But maybe just to use or punish her. Negative. But he does whisk her away to safety. Positive. But again, maybe just to use or punish her. Negative. Everything in BFA was just so dang ambiguous. In the last bit of Azara that we see in the expansion, we get answers to some of those questions. She is part of the Dark Inquisitor Xanesh fight, where she has been imprisoned and is being tortured. So clearly everything that I was seeing before was dead wrong. And it wasn't entirely surprising. I knew it wasn't likely to pan out, but it was still a fun idea. Anyway, N'Zoth is having Azara tortured, so he clearly doesn't care for her. And after the fight, Azara explains that she was planning to weaken N'Zoth herself using the Xal'atath dagger, but that we threw a wrench into her plans. Nevertheless, she hands the weapon over to us and disappears through a void portal, and hasn't been seen since. So clearly she doesn't care for him either. Dang, game over. That'd be fine, of course, had they actually handled the two characters in satisfying ways instead of mostly squandering their potential, but instead we got what we did. So, Now that you've heard why I suspected something might be there between the two of them, allow me to elaborate on why the pairing was so appealing to me, and there are 3 chief reasons. Reason 1, tentacles. Reason 2, the love-hate dynamic. When it comes to love stories, there are 2 categories that appeal to me. There are those that I consider representative of a healthy real-life relationship where the 2 participants are basically really good friends. Those are nice if I want a cozy, feel-good depiction. But for raw entertainment, I have to go with an adversarial dynamic that would be horrible in real life. Yeah, I'm one of those freaks that shipped Ryuko and Nui together in Kill la Kill. Wonder why that show would be on my mind for this video. And that's definitely what we have here with Azara and Azeroth. I don't know what it is about the love-hate dynamic that appeals to me. Maybe that's I get the full swath of passion. Maybe it's that all the affirmative stuff is balanced out and tempered by the more vitriolic elements so you don't get the cringe factor. Or maybe it's that it's fun to watch horrible people, and all the more fun to watch horrible people supporting each other. Who knows? Reason 3. I'm a big fan of the romancing Cthulhu trope. Admittedly, it's usually played for horror, but on occasion you get a more consensual dynamic. Stuff like Sis and Nurgle in The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Evan and Luis in Spring, and at one point Kyoko and Octavia von Seckendorf in Madoka. Again, it's hard for me to articulate why this appeals to me as much as it does. Maybe because in a lot of ways, it's an awful thing. Like, for the more human character, they're getting together with a literal monster. But at the same time, it can be a beautiful thing. Like, this love was able to blossom despite it seemingly being against the natural world itself. And, if you'll permit me, I'd like to go on a little tangent here, and talk about a book that any cosmic horror fan would have heard of. The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. The book is a collection of 10 short stories and could be considered a deception by the author, as it starts out and sells itself as dark and supernatural. The earlier stories deal heavily with the mystery of the titular being, featuring a play by the same name that drives those who witness it to madness and tragedy. By the end of the book, the stories seem devoid of anything supernatural, and are actually quite light-hearted in nature. Most people consider the cosmic horror to end with the 4th story, The Yellow Sign. But when I read it, I thought the 5th story fit into this supernatural section as well. This story, The Demoiselle d'Is, follows a man named Philippe as he gets lost in some moorlands. He encounters a wealthy woman and her party who reside at a chateau and who engage in falconry. He accepts her invitation to stay the night, and in the morning has a flirtatious conversation with her before being bitten by a viper, and awakes to find that the woman he had fallen for lived and died centuries ago. But it's my headcanon that the female lead is none other than the King in Yellow themselves. Her name is Jeanne d'Is. Jaundice. Yellow. Coincidence? Never. Furthermore, in their flirtations, they speak of falconry and how he has already been caught by her. And of course, there's the surreal ending that reveals he had been briefly lost in time. So it's kind of a cosmic horror version of The Lake House. But more to the point, it would make this an example of him romancing the King in Yellow. I really love this short story, partially because I seem to be the only one with that headcanon. I'm weird, I know. And that's about it. The story of how, back in the day, I shipped Azara with a Lovecraftian monstrosity because I looked way too deeply into ambiguous and sometimes meaningless writing during BFA. And the reasons I liked it. Tentacles, the love-hate dynamic, and the appeal of dating an eldritch abomination. Yep, I hope you somehow found that entertaining. For this week's drawing, it only seemed natural to go with the corruptor himself, N'Zoth. And I was really satisfied with how this one turned out. Same with Yogg-Saron. Drawing the old gods has been a fun time, and I'm going to try to do all of them at some point. But rather than draw him where we actually face him in the in-game version of Ny'alotha, I decided to go with something closer to my preconceived notions of Ny'alotha, which is someplace deep under the sea. And it ultimately took the form of some underwater cave Titan prison thing. I also borrowed the Titan console things from the Azara fight, And like with Yogg-Saron, tried to make him look bigger than he does in-game. I mean, I guess in the actual N'Zoth fight, we're kind of just fighting his brain or something like that. If you're going by the skybox at the start of the carapace of a N'Zoth fight, the actual body of N'Zoth is frickin' ginormous, and I didn't want to go quite that big. Anyway, as I'm sure you can tell by this video, I was quite interested in N'Zoth, but I much prefer the voice he was using when he was trying to sweet-talk Ajara during the Warbringer short. You know, deals. I like deals. Over the generic, angry, big guy voice we got for a lot of his actual in-game representation.
Insolent whelp, you desecrate that which you were bred to serve.
And pretty much everyone agrees that shooting him with an Azerite laser beam was the lamest possible way to kill him off. So definitely the old god that we got the most hype for, and probably the biggest disappointment in the end. But I'll always cherish the speculation that he brought to the lore community. That'll be it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next week. Bye-bye.